Right into our weather forecast where we are expecting some, you could say, maybe improving conditions for tomorrow. Today was a pretty standard August day with the scattered rain and our temperatures well into the 90s. But tomorrow it will not be quite as muggy as drier air begins to show up, but a more noticeable and a pretty nice for a lot of us drop in humidity and temperatures is coming midweek. We may spend most of the afternoons in the 80s with lower humidity, so it could be pretty nice. And then we have tropical storm Fernand, which has formed as of this afternoon, and it's set to stay out over the ocean. Not going to be a very memorable storm, it looks like. Today we did make it into the middle 90s for spots at least. Temperatures now in the 70s to lower 80s. Live radar is showing things a lot quieter even than just an hour or so ago where we had the big flare up of a lot of lightning. And I'm sure you may have heard, if you were anywhere near this storm, rumbles of thunder. That main heavier part of that thunderstorm area has weakened and weakened pretty fast, but still brought, as I was showing you, about 1.5 inches of rain to Kenner, and other spots like Belle Chase got near 2 inches of rain from earlier today. We have a little boundary passing through, and as it moves south, tomorrow is looking drier. So tomorrow, starting off the day in the 70s and then highs about 95, so still a really hot feel, but less humidity. So the feels like temperature might stop before you even get to 100. So that would be a treat for this time of year. Tomorrow you can see your forecast noon close to 90, and then by 5 p.m. we'll have highs about 93 to 95 or so, probably still about 93 by 5 p.m. So moving through tonight, everything pretty quiet. This is by early tomorrow, 9 a.m. We're also quiet. A couple of showers or storms not out of the question near the coast, for example, at 4 p.m., but we're not expecting a lot of rain tomorrow. Here is our next front getting a push farther south and slowly working through over the first couple of days of the week, but it looks like by Tuesday we could start to feel a drier kind of air feel. So by Sunday you can see dew point temperatures, look at this, in the 60s. That's a pretty noticeable difference. Some spots may get stuck in the 70s for dew points, but even lower 70s would be noticeable, I think, at this time of year. We'll fast forward into Monday, and look at this, all of us, with the exception of Homa, but Homa pretty close to the 60s for dew points. And then as we move forward through Wednesday, maybe dew points only around 60 and maybe some 50s not far from us. So when you look at the dew point scale moving from the muggy 70s, very common for dew point temperatures, that's a measure of humidity we often talk about in the summertime in the 70s, but dropping into the 60s or maybe flirting with upper 50s, I mean, that would be quite a difference, especially at this point in late August when we could easily be dealing with much worse weather, we'll say. Tropical storm Fernand out in the Atlantic. Now here is Bermuda, so you can see where it's formed to the southeast of Bermuda, and this is a tiny swirl of clouds as of tonight. You can see it lost a little bit of its outer cloud cover and some of its rain, but it does look like it might strengthen a bit. It's just barely a tropical storm, but it'll be over warm water for a bit until it moves over more wind shear, and cooler waters in the North Atlantic might eventually skirt somewhere off the coast of Newfoundland. But again, not really a big significant kind of storm. And by Wednesday, it might already be a post-tropical system. Here is our next spot that could potentially develop. It has a 40% chance now, and you can see it's gotten a bit better organized. This is just a tropical wave known as Invest 99, but there is dry air out here, and there will eventually be some shear over the Caribbean. So even though our models are tracking it sort of straight into the Caribbean, it looks like even by the next couple of days, it'll lose its window for potential development. So we'll see, we'll track it. It's a long way out, but you can see it might stay on the southern end of the Caribbean, so you're kind of central to southern end. And again, by that point, it may not be an organized or developed system. We'll track everything closely for you this time of year. You know, we're looking at everything very often and looking in depth, but we don't have any tropical threats for us at this point. And we'll continue instead, incredibly, with less humid air and a nice break in temperatures. If you've been longing for those October kind of cold fronts getting into fall, this won't be quite it, but it will certainly be something. Even tomorrow, I think we could feel mornings and evenings. And if you happen to find some shade, that's when the lower humidity will make a difference. A slight drop tomorrow, and then especially by Wednesday and through the end of the week, we may continue with a high pressure area that could keep that kind of familiar forecast going Wednesday, maybe through the end of the upcoming week.